Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Today is officially the first day of winter. So all that snow and ice you've been enduring was fall weather. Ain't that a real nutcracker? Now here's your host, Dave Kearney.
Yeah, baby. Welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the warm confines of the Trauma Center studios, coast to coast, powered by the Recovery Room. Chad, it is -5 degrees right now in Wisconsin. And the anticipation later on this evening, I think it's going to start around 5 or 6 o'clock, is that we're going to be in for they're just calling this what it is, a shitstorm. We are in for a shitstorm. There is a potential of 10 inches of snow to accumulate between now and Christmas, which of course is on Sunday. Man, I tell you what, it makes me feel really grateful for a number of different things. This one being the most salient. I don't have to go anywhere really today if I don't want to. I can walk the dog. I can work around the house. I can stay bundled up in the 5 layers that I've got going on right now because, dude, if you've got to be out in this weather today, it's going to suck. It's going to be like playing Chicago this weekend in Chicago. I saw some of the temperatures from around the NFL. This is going to be one of the worst weekends of football temperatures in the history of the league.
Yeah, this weather, I think we're supposed to have, let's see, tonight, -13 with a high tomorrow, which is, I know for you guys, doesn't sound so bad. A high tomorrow of 8. So around here, that's pretty damn
bad.
cold. It's 14 right now, so it's like Bermuda right now. So everything's great. I got my shorts on. Everything's fine. But yeah, it's this weather is not fun.
No, and the only thing that 14 sounds fun to is somebody like Pete Rose, or if you're in like Alabama. Like, other than that, that doesn't sound fun to anybody. 8 degrees is miserable. Yesterday it was 10. At least the sun was out, though.
Yeah.
At least the sun was out. That part was okay. At least we had some of that.
You're right. R. Kelly would love to make yellow snow in 14. That's
oh,
true.
My gosh. Are you kidding me? He pioneered yellow snow at 14. As a matter of fact, when he first got his first indictment, there was handwriting in yellow snow, and it was R. Kelly's name. And one of the fathers noticed that it was his daughter's handwriting.
Wow.
That's how they were originally able to put that all together. I see that Rob Dog's up and at it this morning. Jeremy P12 Foreman. Yeah, they're both out there in it. Rob Dog says, Chad, screw that. I need to drive in that crap for work. Well, don't do too much out there, Rob Dog. And P12 Foreman says, yeah, I got to go drive a FedEx truck and make Christmas dreams come true. LOL. Speaking of Christmas, Chad, we're off on Friday. We are going to be taking the show off on Friday. Enjoy the Christmas holiday over the weekend, guys and gals. Hopefully you've got something planned where you do not have to travel because, Chad, most of the folks in the Midwest need to leave the Midwest for Christmas, right? They go to other people's homes across the country, or they just escape to be snowbirds. Michigan, Ohio, Minneapolis, Illinois, Chicago, Wisconsin. We are going to be in one of those polar vortexes that could inhibit traveling like on a large scale basis. That's one thing that I've learned about being here, and I don't know how it is for you there. The area of La Crosse, in this particular area, it feels like the Bermuda Triangle, because once you're here, you can never leave. And if you do leave, it's really fucking tough to come back, man. It is really tough to come back. They're like, you're either in or you're out. There's no hedging your bets here.
It's like a frozen island. Yeah. I don't really get outside the triangle much anyway. But yeah, similar. I mean, you don't really want to be traveling in this kind of weather because God forbid you break down and you're in the middle of nowhere. And,
absolutely.
That's no place to be. So I would highly recommend just, staying bundled up, hope your power doesn't go out, and you should be good.
Yeah, I do this when I travel out here, and I know this seems extreme because I'm traveling like 10 miles in between destinations, but during the depths of the wintertime, this isn't an all-year thing, but during the depths of the winter, I've got an extra blanket in the SUV. I keep hand warmers in the glove compartment. I keep an extra pair of gloves because you never know. And also, I told my son this, and for the younger audience members, keep this in mind. Always keep at least a quarter tank of gas and probably a half tank of gas in your car when it's wintertime because, Chad, sometimes you just slide off the road. Nothing you can do about it. Not your fault. Was not what you anticipated. But if you don't have enough gas, you could be waiting for some time until somebody comes to pick you up. That's when things get really dicey. Also, a granola bar or two, possibly some mixed nuts, some trail mix, if you will. Keep yourself, from going crazy and having to go out and hunt rabid squirrels, right?
Yeah,
because that's when things go awry. I mean, big time.
Half a large pizza, maybe.
Half a large pizza.
Kinds of. You can actually keep You can keep steaks in there at this time of year.
Omaha steak package is just in the back right there.
Break out your hibachi and just sit on the side of the road, wait for the tow truck.
That's it, right? You're like, yeah, it's a good thing we're from Wisconsin, and you know what? Here would be the great thing. And Jason P1 Breacher checking in here. He'd be one of these guys too. Wisconsin folks would be like, oh, see, in Minnesota, they couldn't do this. They're afraid of the cold. That's why they play their football inside. We just, we get our hibachis out here in the snow. We break down, we do it.
This is great. R. Kelly likes his women like he likes his scotch, 12 years old and mixed with Coke. Wow. Okay, that might have been a little too far, but still funny.
Well, listen, it's something that we can do here on this program that you can't get away with across the board. We understand that. What's Morning Wood got to say? He's like, winter tip, keep a candle in your car. When lit, your car will never dip below 32 degrees.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. Then you have to
actually really
holder, though,
Yeah.
You don't want to get waxed all over your seats.
You want a scented candle, though, Morning Wood? Like, what do you see? I'm figuring for something like that, I want something relaxing, like a beech wood, possibly a sandalwood.
Right.
Maybe something with lavender. That's just me, though.
Well, lavender would put you to sleep, though, supposedly, right? Isn't lavender supposed to help you sleep? So that might not be a good idea.
But relaxes you. I mean, listen, you could be looking at
tense. Yeah.
Right. And you could be looking at the end is nigh type of a situation. And if that is the case, you also want to keep a hose in your car too, because in case you're like, this is it, man, you run that hose from the tailpipe back in the car, you have the candle on and boom, you don't even notice it. Wow. The lavender just takes you off and you're feeling great. Speaking of passing over, man, today's a big hurt day for the NFL and for NFL fans. The Pittsburgh Steelers great Franco Harris has passed away at 72 years old. And Chad, we were talking about this off air on the heels of the Immaculate Reception's 50th anniversary. When we come back, we'll talk a little Franco Harris. The Bucs have a big game tonight. We're loaded here on the Sports Carnival. Stick around. What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Hello, I am Don Francisco, and I roast and blend coffees for your pleasure and mine. My newest blend is Vanilla Nuts. The coffee so rich and so sweet, it tastes like the French Alps has dangled its in your cup of java. If you love coffee like I do, then you'll love Don Francisco's with a 135-year tradition. Because at Don Francisco's, if you're up all night, so are we.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios, this is the Sports Carnival. If anyone tells you you're going to regret something in the morning, just sleep until noon. Problem solved. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, baby. See, we come up with all sorts of creative solutions and also creative advertorials for the likes of Don Francisco's. I wanted to thank you, Chad, because Don Francisco's, it keeps me going. It's not the most expensive coffee, that's for sure, which is why I think if you use 3 or 4 times the amount, it seems to get you where you're going faster. And possibly that's just the way it goes with cheaper foods, right? You get something for less expensive. You figure, hey, I've got to eat a little bit more of this or drink a little bit more of it to make up for the lack of quality. And I don't know, I'm buzzing, man. Thank you, by the way, for that.
Are you actually literally drinking Don Francisco's, or are you just looking for a way to bridge a conversation?
I'm actually drinking Don Francisco's.
It's not bad, right? Which one are you doing?
I found it at Walmart. This is just like their traditional. I want to say it was their medium roast.
Not bad.
Listen, I remember you used to carry the shit in your house in Vegas. I saw it there. It was. And I've always thought, and I don't know if the time is now for this, but I've always thought we need to hit up the people at Don Francisco's and send them that stuff.
I think they'd like it.
I do too. I think that there is a market for this. And listen, it's not like Don Francisco's is circling the drain, but they're surely not like, popping up into everybody's cup of joe. Maybe we've got something here. Matt from the Recovery Room checked in, and of course he was expert on this. Yeah, we had a very creative transition, didn't we, Matt? A very creative transition. This is the kind of shit you can do on the Sports Carnival that you can't do in other areas. This is just one of the reasons we do it here. Thank you.
Yeah, he says R.I.P. Franco Harris. And then I just wanted to throw this in Morningwood. I'd like this. Get yourself a candle that smells like a stripper. Yeah.
What does that smell like? See,
Uh,
to me, that smells like sadness.
Sweat and shame is what it smells like.
And glitter, possibly some glitter.
Yeah.
You've got some like less than expensive perfumes. The thing is this. So Chad and I lived in Las Vegas, and I'm not saying that I was a frequenter of every strip club because I didn't have that kind of money, and I was a bother at 23 years old. So I didn't have all these open days in which to go out and exploit myself and lose all of my cash. But Chad, there was one strip club in Vegas, and I don't think it exists anymore. The Fabulous Girls of Glitter Gulch. It was downtown. It was on Fremont Street.
Yeah, I don't think it's there anymore.
No, it's probably not. But I walked into this place when I was 23 years old. I had a friend of mine with me. I had just moved back up from LA, and it smelled like 1960s urine and ass. And I asked the fucking guy right away. I was like, dude, what's up with the carpet smell? And he's like, man, we've been trying to get this carpet smell out for 10 years, and it's just never coming out. And that to me is the smell of strip clubs. That it was just 1960s ass, and somebody had just taken a piss right on the floor. It was awful.
Yeah, it's like that in a lot of strip clubs. In the nicer ones, it's like 1975. Same.
Sure. So we'll look for that candle. Hey, by the way, Christmas is coming soon. If you know a degenerate, perhaps a stripper scented candle could be just what you're looking for. If you're looking for other holiday gifts, Chad, this is a perfect transition back into the recovery room. Our big holiday giveaway party is coming up on the 29th of December. A 43-inch TV, 162-centimeter snowboard, a ton of gifts and prizes from Stack's Family Farms. And, of course, our partners at Lacrosse Beverage will be given away on the 29th of the month from 6 to 10. We're having a huge brouhaha. It's going to be a soiree of soirees, a P1 meetup. And to end the year off right and get us started for 2023, double entries for every Alaskan New Glarus or Blue Moon beer that you buy. And then, of course, we'll be giving away the farm coming up throughout the evening from 6 to 10. There's so much stuff. We're giving things away every 15 minutes. So go to the recovery room, get a beer, get an entry slip. Again, the 29th, we're having that big party. And, of course, Matt will be there, we feel like, in probably his worst Christmas sweater.
What does double entries mean? You get two entries for each time, so you get twice the chances, if you will.
Twice the chances on that particular evening.
That's
not bad.
Yeah,
not bad.
I like that. For drinking. You get rewarded for drinking, which in Wisconsin is like a gift. That is Christmas right there.
Yes, that is Christmas. And that's why we just love holiday season 12 months a year here in Wisconsin, because every day there is something to celebrate. It's like looking at, and I've got some, never mind. It's like looking at a certain kind of religious holiday calendar and seeing like there's a day every day of the week, if you really wanted there to be, to celebrate something or other. And we look at that and we own that here in Wisconsin. P12 Foreman, or actually, no, that's Breach. You're saying that Foreman knows the Fabulous Girls of Glitter Gulch. I'm not surprised. Not surprised by that. Foreman lived in Vegas for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've been to Vegas in the last, let's say, 20 years, you might have gone there, because I think that closed down probably 10 years ago or more.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that. It might have been, Chad. I don't know. It's been a long time. And again, I didn't frequent those places. I looked at it a lot like Frank Costanza in the great Seinfeld episode. Why pay for it? It's like parking. If you drive around the block a couple of times, put in some effort, you can probably find it for free.
It depends on how you go. If you're going there by yourself in a raincoat, then it's sad.
That's sad. If
you're going there with a bunch of buddies and you're having fun and you got your one buddy, that's kind of nervous or whatever, and you're paying strippers to sit on his lap and do lap dances and stuff like that, and you make fun of them. That's fun, right? And you have some drinks and and you get to see some titties. It's not bad. It's cool. It's, again, depends on how you're hanging out there, because I have seen where there are those older guys that are sitting in the corner with their raincoat on, and you're just like, wow, that's sad.
So it's man, there is a live fucking story that I would love to be able to share right now, but for purposes of not outing certain members of the audience and potential sponsorship members, I'm not going to tell you this story, but it was fucking awesome, and it had something to do with what you just mentioned. Okay. We transition here on the Sports Carnival. From strippers to a guy that I'm sure was too nice of a guy, from what I understand, too humble to probably ever have gone into a strip club, Franco Harris. And Franco died at 72 years old. This is a real shocker here, Chad. The Immaculate Reception's 50th anniversary was set to be commemorated this upcoming weekend. The Steelers and the Raiders were playing again. The NFL set this thing up perfectly, right? The NFL is an entertainment product. They know what they're doing. They set up the Raiders and the Steelers for this upcoming weekend. Franco Harris was going to be one of the few people to ever, I think the third guy to ever have his number retired in Pittsburgh Steelers history. Because again, if you retired every number for the Steelers, they'd run out of numbers. They've got so many great players. But this guy, Franco Harris, for those that are the younger portion of our audience members that don't know, this guy, Franco Harris, was one of the, at the time of his retirement, best running backs of all time. So Franco Harris played at Pittsburgh from 72 to 83, Chad. And when he retired, 12,000 plus career yards. I think he was sitting at 12,100 and something. He was third all time in NFL history at the time in rushing. He is now 15th all time in rushing yardage. But he was really the catalyst, Chad, for that Steelers Super Bowl era to begin. Because as good as Terry Bradshaw was, when we look at his career numbers, they definitely didn't throw the ball like they do now. I mean, Terry Bradshaw was a good quarterback for the time, no question. But it was a Franco Harris type-led team. 8 times in his career over 1,000 yards. He was the NFL Rookie of the Year, a 9-time Pro Bowler. I don't remember how many times he was selected to the All-Pro. I put this together quick this morning because the news broke very early this morning. And again, member of 4 different Super Bowl teams for that Pittsburgh Steelers team, which again dominated the 70s. I heard an anecdote, and I was curious to get your take on this because it sort of has to do with our poll question this morning, which is on our Twitter feed and our Facebook page at the Sports Carney. I heard an anecdote, though, that stations like ESPN, Fox Sports, Bally Sports Network, all of these different stations probably wouldn't have started if it weren't for the Immaculate Reception, which then set up the explosion of football onto television, which then really preceded in 1979, 78, 79, the origins of ESPN. Where do you stand on where the Immaculate Reception is in NFL's top plays of history? And do you think that it's fair to say that a play like that has something to do, maybe not, all of what transpired, but something to do with the formation of sports television as we know it now?
I think it definitely has a huge impact because it's one of those plays that unless you see it, you wouldn't believe it. If it's described or you heard it on the radio, it doesn't have the same impact when you visually see it. It was unbelievable. Sure. I definitely think it's a top 5 play of all time. I include the catch, Joe Montana to Dwight Clark is in there. You could name off a couple of them, but that one used to be number 1, and I don't know where it is. Personally, I would have it probably still number 1 or number 2. I don't know where it is in the pantheon of all the great plays that have been through the NFL as far as the experts consider it, but I definitely think it's up there at the top. And I can see where it would have an influence of possibly bringing on ESPN and things like that. Again, it goes back to that's why you watch football, because you never know what you're going to see. Norm Macdonald used to talk about the late great Norm Macdonald used to talk about betting on football and why it was so hard because the ball isn't round. You never know which way that ball is going to go. And that's a good example of that. You never know which way that ball is going to go. And if you are the right guy at the right place at the right time, with the reflexes and the ability to do what Franco Harris did, you have to go back. I mean, this would be a good day to go back and watch that play again. Go on YouTube and check it out and appreciate what you saw. I will mention one thing you didn't have on here. He was the MVP of Super Bowl 9. So they won.
Yes, he was.
Super Bowl 9, 10, 13, and 14. I think 10 was Lynn Swann, 13 and 14 was Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw did kind of come on later. He was actually kind of in a quarterback struggle early on in those early years.
He
wasn't quite as big as impact as he was in later years. But Franco Harris, the other thing is Italian-American. He had that Italian contingent at every game. One of the greatest running backs of all time. I think you have to put him up there when you look at his numbers and his accomplishments.
Yeah, I do too. I think that, again, for younger fans, sometimes we get so caught up in recency bias. We really do, right? And we forget in a large way the history of the game in every sport that brought us to where we're at now. Franco Harris was also one of those guys, Chad, growing up, especially as he was just retiring when I was coming of age and really getting interested in the NFL, that was still known by one name. Because back in those days, you didn't have that kind of pub and that kind of press in the NFL. You had a couple of guys. OJ in Southern California, before he became a murderer, was just, he was as large as life, right? So you had the likes of OJ, but Franco, you didn't need to say his last name. You understood right away who people were talking about. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've got fans worldwide. They're like the Green Bay Packers, Chad. They are one of those teams like the Green Bay Packers that you can go across the globe and find fans of, probably because of their enormous success, like the Green Bay Packers, right? The Steelers still have the most Super Bowls and total Super Bowl wins in NFL history. I think the Patriots are right there with them now with 6, right? But the impact, I guess I go back to, of Franco Harris in that play, the immaculate reception, to me is still so impactful. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you the way that I voted, because this morning's poll question, folks, it's on our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney. It's on our Facebook group page, which continues to grow. I'm so excited about that. We've got 260 members now on our Facebook group page. The question for you this morning is this: where do you rank the immaculate reception in terms of top plays all time in NFL history? Number 1, top 5, top 10, top 20. It's not outside of any of those. I still think it's number 1 because of a couple of things. You mentioned the Super Bowl MVP, and I did not have that here. The score was 7-6. The Steelers were down 7-6. It was a 4th and 10 play. Okay, Terry Bradshaw throws the ball. It gets tipped up in the air, like everybody stops except for Franco Harris, right? And he catches this thing and he hauls it in, and the Pittsburgh Steelers win the game, to the surprise and chagrin of, like, I mean, half the stadium at least. If we had better bandwidth here, if we were able to show that highlight and not like lose one of us while we were doing that, we would show it to you guys. But Chad, you're right. This is a day for going on YouTube and just watching this thing and seeing how it all unfolded.
Yeah, Jeremy Foreman. That's the conspiracy theory. Why is it that John Madden and Franco Harris both passed away right after ESPN aired A Football Life of both guys? Well, it's because they have to pay homage to Moloch. I mean, we all know that. I mean, that's what they do. They had to sacrifice somebody, so that's what
that had to go there, Foreman.
That's what that is. Yes, if you want to go conspiracy theory, I can do it all day long. Very interesting, weird timing. We're just going to call it weird timing. Like everything in life. Oh no, that's just a coincidence. Everything is just a coincidence. The real part about all of this is it's just sad. It's sad to see somebody like 72 nowadays isn't that old, really. I mean,
no.
You know, it's a good run, but 72 isn't that old, and it's sad to see him pass right before all of this celebration that we were just talking about. That is obviously just a coincidence.
Well, Tom Brady may die at 72 playing football. Like, that's not outside of the realm of possibility at this point. Like, he might actually pass away on the football field at 72 because he'll refuse to retire. And you'll have people like Mike Greenberg continuing to say that you can never count Tom Brady out. Yeah, it's not like old. Listen, I can't go with you on the conspiracy theory. I thought that was so funny that Foreman said that, though, because right before we started the show, right before Chad and I were talking Foreman about that very, very thing, not with any intention of going down that particular road, but look at you. You just brought us right back there. It is sad. Look, I'm sure it's there. You know, I can't say anything other than coincidental. But what it does do in many cases, Chad, when somebody like this passes away, is it brings back into focus the importance of their legacy, right? Like, so for a lot of people, and I doubt that Rob Dog and UWL's Thomas and a number of our other, younger audience members have spent much, if any, time thinking about what Franco Harris means. Now, the game was in large part different now or then than it is now. So you wouldn't have the same kind of impact probably as a running back, but I don't know, man. There are these guys in you looked up Adrian Peterson, Derrick Henry. There are still guys that, can bust and make a team their own by being a running back, not necessarily a quarterback. And Franco would still, I think, be one of those guys to probably do that.
Well, when you think about it, the 60s was dominated by the Packers. The 70s was dominated by the Steelers. And, in both eras, and then even in the 80s, it was about running the football and playing defense. In the past, obviously the forward pass was a big part of it. I'm not saying that quarterbacks didn't have a huge impact. But yeah, the focal point of running backs and how important they were dominated the league really all the way up until the last, maybe 20 years. It's kind of changed a bit. Yeah. And so a guy like Franco Harris being as good as he is on a team like he did, he was extremely popular. He was extremely, talented and had a huge impact, not only for the Steelers, but on the NFL.
So looking at our poll question here, Chad, on our Facebook group page right now, and we're getting a ton of votes on this. Top 5 is getting 57% of all votes, 14% coming in for number 1, 28% for top 10. And somebody is incorrectly saying in the top 20 on our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney, 75-25, 75% top 5, 25% for number 1.
What about David Tyree and the helmet catch? Is that in the top 5?
It's got to be. That's
right?
got to be up there. Justin
Do you remember
Jefferson's catch from this year.
Do you remember Dwight Clark's the catch?
Absolutely.
Joe Montana against the Cowboys in the NFC Championship in 1981.
Of course I do.
So that's top 5. These are all top 5 moments. I almost would have to say is as amazing as that catch David Tyree made. Franco Harris's might be greater. Well, I don't know. It's almost like neck and neck.
Well, it led directly, both of those plays led directly to the victories of their teams, except for the one with, so Franco Harris's was the walk-off, right? Like that was almost like the walk-off score, right, winning the Super Bowl for the Steelers, game over. That's why I think it also, and just remarkable nature of the play. I mean, the circumstance, 7-6, 4th and 10, everybody's stopping. And here's this guy churning, right? And just taking the ball, and it's like nearly hitting the turf, and he goes. But David Tyree's helmet catch, look, Justin Jefferson, the catch that this guy made earlier this season.
Yes.
Right? Justin Jefferson made a catch earlier this season. I don't know if I've ever seen or will ever see again in my life. But I do think that in some cases, this is why we give Jordan so much credit, why we give Brady and Montana so much credit. It's when you're doing it. And
it's in the moment.
In the moment. And a Super Bowl moment to boot. Now, that's one of the reasons why I think the catch against Dallas isn't going to be number one, never would be. First of all, it wasn't, when you look at the play itself, it wasn't that difficult to play. It wasn't a long throw. It was a short throw in the end zone, but the impact of it was so great. That was still just an NFC championship game though, right? That wasn't a Super Bowl. And so when you elevate to the Super Bowl, I think that's why this immaculate reception for Franco Harris is still going to be at least a top 5 play for at least the next 10, 15 years. The thing about the NFL is this though, you see stuff now that you've never seen before because of how great these guys are. So it starts to, trump things. What did we see last weekend? We saw the Patriots decide to throw backwards laterals, and a former Patriot walks in with a touchdown. And the wildness of the NFL. It's why sports are so fantastic, regardless if you think they're scripted or not.
Yeah, and I think that the one-handed catch thing has become much more prevalent than it ever was before. Like some of these catches that these guys are making, you never really saw. Actually, his teammate, Franco Harris's teammate, Lynn Swann, was one of those guys that used to make amazing catches as well. That's another guy that you should look at if you're kind of a noob or you're a younger person and you don't know who Lynn Swann is. Lynn Swann was so graceful, and again won the MVP at Super Bowl 10. And with Franco Harris, that was a good combo. And then you had Terry Bradshaw on top of it, and then that amazing defense.
Yeah,
it's no wonder that they dominated the 70s. Probably one of the greatest teams if you really look at the domination of a decade. That's got to be one of the top 5 teams of all time as well.
Well, no doubt. And that's why so many NFL coaches and general managers were just, crestfallen when free agency entered, because this was in the era before free agency. And these teams had complete control of players and there was no movement. See, that's one thing that we really, really lose sight of now, how the NFL is built for parity now, as opposed to what it was back in those days, right? Because the NFL back in those days was a lot more like Major League Baseball, who, by the way, saw the most incredible spending explosion. I know this is an awkward transition. The Mets just signed Carlos Correa to a 12-year, $315 million deal after the Giants decided not to sign him because of a medical report coming back saying they shouldn't. And the Mets do you know the Mets are going to pay $120 million in luxury tax this year, which is more than 10 other major league teams have for their entire salaries. So, point being, the NFL used to look a lot more like Major League Baseball, and teams like the Packers, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Dolphins, these were teams that were able to retain all of these players for years with zero consequence, essentially. Free agency broke all that up. And who was the first big winner of free agency? The Green Bay Packers, because Reggie White, to me, is still the most impactful free agent that has ever changed teams in the history of the NFL, as far as just a free agent. Peyton Manning probably comes in a close second.
Yeah.
When he leaves Indianapolis and goes to Denver, they won a Super Bowl and went to 2 of them in his time, and he set so many records. But man, before you had free agency and teams could just hoard all this talent, it was a different era for sure.
So a Facebook user on the Franco catch, he caught the ball just off the ground at a shoelace height after a ricochet in the air, quite a ways from the collision of the defender and receiver. Seeing it live was one not sure that they just saw. What? That means you may have read that wrong. But yes, either way, it was impressive, and it is one of those deals where unless you see it, you wouldn't believe it. Again, like if you were listening on the radio and you heard it, and you were a Steelers fan, you've been pretty excited, but it wouldn't quite paint that picture. And then when you actually watch it, you're like, holy shit balls, how did that happen? How is that even possible? Oh my God, I can't believe I saw that. It's one of those deals.
No, it really is. And I think that for those that, again, have not seen that, perhaps maybe you haven't seen it in a while, go to YouTube. We'd love to show it to you if we had the bandwidth, and check this thing out. Foreman, before we go, did say that today's receptions are assisted by the gloves they have nowadays. That's for sure. Back in those days,
true. Yes.
Back in those days, it was really just the Raiders who had used Stickum and other forms of cheating in order to get those amazing catches.
Fred Biletnikoff was famous for the Stickum, yes.
Absolutely. And he's unapologetic, or at least he was unapologetic about that one. All right, guys and gals, let's take a quick break here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios, warm and cozy from coast to coast. Stay tuned. Back in about 60 seconds. The official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial, my good buddies Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi. Listen, we all know the mortgage industry is in a bit of an upheaval right now, and that's why it's more important than ever to go to a couple of guys that you can trust, a local operation right here in La Crosse. That is the Midwest mortgage team. Again, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi of Land Home Financial. Don't make a mistake with your mortgage needs. Go to the official mortgage provider of the Sports Carnival, the Midwest mortgage team, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi.
Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
Back to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. How do you know Santa has big balls? Because of his huge sack, of course. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
I just thought it was because AC/DC was his walk-up song when he's going to the plate, right? Because Santa's about as real as, the striking out bat guy from the famed story. I just thought, that was his walk-up song. He's got big balls.
He's got the biggest balls of them all.
Yes, he does. His balls are, they're always rocking, swaying to the left and to the right. AC/DC, clever little turn of phraseology there. Do you know what's the difference in chord structure of any AC/DC song? Can you tell me that, or is there any?
There isn't.
Okay.
It's basically
the same.
Though. Yeah.
But it's good shit. If you're in the mood for, some good old-fashioned blues rock type stuff, AC/DC is your thing. If you're into having gnomes, elves, mythological creatures be part of your childhood's, your childhood or your upbringing of your children, Santa's for you. I was really upset about the whole Santa thing as a kid. I'm going to be honest. I was taken aback because I felt like I'd been lied to. And I don't know that I ever trusted my parents again after that. I really don't, because they try to sell you this whole big fucking story. And then you find out I was 6, right? I was a young person when I found out. I was very upset. I'll never forget being in the kitchen with my mother. And if she's watching this morning, I'm sorry that I have to bring this up, but I was like dressing her down. I felt very, very, very taken.
That you were lied to?
Yes, that I was lied to.
Welcome to life.
I don't enjoy frivolity for just no good reason. You've got to give it to me for sports or something like that.
As we progress on this marble, you'll learn more and more things are a lie. And again, we're living in the Truman Show. Rob Dog, not very happy about Carrera becoming a Met. Something about Mets fans parading around in their Mets pajamas.
So Rob Dog, his parents, and we've known this on the Sports Carnival at all for many years now. Rob Dog's parents are huge Mets fans, and Rob gets into it too, though. Don't get this twisted, because Rob, this is how he ends up rooting for the Knicks here in Western Wisconsin, because his parents have some sort of a affiliation or affliction for teams from New York. So Rob, I hear you, but you've been rooting for the Mets too. The Mets on paper, I'm going to say this though, the Mets on paper have the best baseball team that I've seen since, the Dodgers from last year. These teams that can buy these players. I mean,
a New York team buying a championship. You never see that happen.
Good luck, though. I mean, think about it. Good luck. New York just bought the cow with Aaron Judge, right? So they're going to have this guy for the next decade. He'll never repeat what he did last year. Like, never. That'll never happen. I don't know. Is this going to definitely guarantee success? The Dodgers haven't proven that to be true. Yeah, they win a lot of division pennants. They won that one World Series in the bubble year, in my estimation, largely because Kevin Cash made a fucking mistake. the manager for the Rays, and pulled a pitcher because, well, my analytics sheet said it's time. Like,
don't you think it's time they go to a salary cap in baseball? Isn't this getting a
Yes.
little bit out of hand? 12 years, $315 million. That is,
Well,
I mean, it's a head scratcher. That's a head scratcher.
It makes it like this. There's one of two things that need to happen. Either you get a salary cap and say all the teams are going to be able to compete on the same basic level, or you eliminate all dead ball bitching when it comes to small market teams that say they can't win. Because here's the other thing. You mentioned Miami, the Marlins. I've been mentioning the Tampa Bay Rays. What about the Kansas City Royals? Small market teams can win World Series.
Sure.
Like this can happen. I think that what happens, especially for Brewer fans, and you're up there in Seattle, which isn't considered a small market, but it kind of is, in a lot of ways. What happens is that we get these fans in places like Milwaukee and Seattle whose teams don't draft as well, whose teams don't develop as well, whose teams make bad trades, right, with others. Like the Brewers have given away some fucking Hall of Famers in the last 20 years, right? Zach Greinke's a name that pops up. But we look at the Mets and we look at these other teams and we say, aha, that's the reason for our failure. And I look at teams like the Rays, who were playing on $36 worth of salary last year, plus they had some gift certificates that they gave away, nearly winning a series or 2 years ago. I look at the Kansas City Royals, the same thing. It can be done. I think what it does is it upsets fans who look at their team and just get like a little bit, stunned with the money that they're being spent in big markets, but their teams can't figure it out, when in reality, that's not the problem. The problem is developing your players. And that's one thing the Dodgers, say what you will about them spending the last couple of years, that's one thing the Dodgers do better than almost like any team in the majors. They develop these kids, they pick them good, and then they become stars. The Dodgers haven't really overpaid except for recently.
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of these teams that have a good farm system and develop their guys over time seem to have more longevity. And when you just go out there and pay big money to get guys, I mean, it does get you regular season success and some playoff success, but doesn't necessarily turn into a world championship. So I agree with you. I just think it's a little bit ridiculous. So that's $26.5 million a year for 12 for a shortstop.
Yeah. And Rob Dog just checked back in and he's like, damn, it's a great time to be a shortstop.
No shit.
Well, it really is. Shortstop is an important position for sure.
No, it is. I don't know if it's worth $26 million, but I just think these salaries are a little out of hand. And these luxury tax doesn't mean shit when you have endless amounts of money.
No, but it does mean that the major league teams are all benefiting by this, right?
Well,
because
sure.
that's going into the kitty. And listen, the guy Steve Cohen that bought the Mets, when he bought the Mets, this is what other owners were worried about, that he would drop $500 million on a team in a year. And that's exactly what he did. The Mets have just guaranteed this offseason $600 million in contracts. They've guaranteed $600 million in contracts this year. That's a lot.
Well, and it's funny because it kind of crosses sports. Watch this transition. It's like last night. So Golden State's playing a luxury tax.
Yes,
they
they
have
are.
a huge salary, on their books, and they end up getting their ass kicked by Rob Dog's Knicks and Jalen Brunson. I'm telling you what a trade that has been, and how good did he play last night, especially in the first half?
21-5.
Yeah, 21-5. But I mean, he controlling the game, distributing the rock, getting the offense started. RJ Barrett had a pretty decent game. I think he had 18 points.
Randall was good.
Randall was good. I mean, the Knicks finally are starting to. I mean, if you're a Knicks fan, you gotta be like going, hey, maybe we actually have something here, right? I mean, it seems like it's been a while.
Well, absolutely. And Tom Thibodeau sat down on the bench for the first time in his professional career last night. The Knicks were beating, I'm serious, the Knicks were beating the Warriors so bad. They asked Julius Randle and a couple of the other players about this after the game. He sat down for like the first time in anybody's, like there is not tape of Tom Thibodeau sitting down as a head coach. Now, when he was Doc Rivers' defensive coordinator, essentially for the Boston Celtics that won the NBA championship in 2008, he did sit a bit because Doc Rivers was the guy standing up. But look, the Knicks, they're starting to come on. They're not going to compete necessarily with the teams like the Bucks, the Celtics, the Denver Nuggets, all right, the New Orleans Pelicans, some of these teams that are really emerging. And Chad, that's something that I did want to bring up this morning. And for those that are Bucks fans, the Bucks are playing a big time game tonight. Bucks versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Bucks are currently, I want to say, and I'm having a little issue here getting my website. It's cold this morning. The Bucks were 2-point favorites, I want to say, or they were 2-point dogs. Don't quote me on this one right now. I just had the numbers up in front of me, but they dropped off. needless to say, it's a big game tonight for Milwaukee. But the NBA right now is starting to look a lot like the NBA used to look, except for different. And what I mean by that when I say that is this: the NBA in Chad's and my era growing up, and Maddie from the recovery room, and a lot of you that are watching us this morning, was dominated by big men. But these were big men that were slow, Chad, and plodding guys that ran up and down the court, and it looked like it was a fucking, a labor of love. Painful. Yeah. That's why the guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, David Robinson were considered Giselles because they were able to glide up and down the court fairly effortlessly. But I was just watching this Nuggets game unfold last night. Nikola Jokic becomes the second player or third player in the history of the league to have 13, 13, and 13. The other two, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Nikola Jokic over his last 6 games, Chad, is averaging 31 points, 14 and a half rebounds, and 11 assists. He's averaging a 30-fucking-point triple-double over his last 6 games. And I'm watching this dude pass the ball last night, and I don't know that I've ever seen a big man pass the ball as deftly as Nikola Jokic is. Now, to his credit, Wilt Chamberlain led the league in assists one year, and we have not seen enough tape of Wilt Chamberlain to know exactly how good of a passer he was, but he played for the Harlem Globetrotters. So there is a chance that Wilt Chamberlain could have been a better passer, but we don't know because we didn't really see it. This guy is just crazy. I know that Street Clothes is injured once again, but he was on an absolute tear. And when healthy, this guy is one of the best bigs ever. You look at Joel Embiid, everybody's favorite 30-game-a-year MVP candidate, Giannis, Zion. Chad, I put this together this morning because, when we look at the game, we have thought largely because the NBA's three-point shooting and scoring, that the game's going guard-dominated. It's not. This is still about tall guys doing really good tall guy things. These tall guys, these bigs now, they just look a lot different than Greg Kite did back when we were coming up, or, Olden Polynice, or any of these players that were basically just big trees that stood underneath the basket. Tree Rollins, for example.
Yeah, you talk about the 2 guys from Georgetown, right? Alonzo Mourning, or 3 guys, Dikembe Mutombo and Patrick Ewing. Guys that they were basically get on the block, throw them the ball, and they're going to make their move, and they're going to shoot their shot, and if they miss, they get their rebound, that type of thing. But they weren't really necessarily running up and down the floor. They definitely weren't handling at the top of the circle, any of those kinds of things. Where all of these guys now, because of what happened with the shooting and guard domination, really what happened was these bigger guys started training like guards. They're handling the ball like guards, and they're learning to play like guards, even though they're in 7-foot bodies. And now you get the result of this, and it's absolutely amazing. Giannis is a great example of that, of a guy that can take it from one end of the floor to the other and actually initiate the offense. And he's a 6'11", 7-foot guy. That's hard to find. You didn't really see that a lot. Obviously, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were kind of aberrations in that manner. You got 2 6'9", 6'10" guys that could handle the ball and do the things that they did, but they still pretty much, as far as Bird went, he still went through his point guard.
Yes,
he could do that, but he didn't necessarily do that. And then obviously Magic Johnson was a point guard at 6'9", and probably the greatest or one of the greatest point guards of all time.
Well, and that's why Magic is still Magic. And another one of those, look backs to NBA history where it's really hard to say who's the greatest because of the different positions that everybody played and the way that Magic set the league on he set it on its axis. I mean, it was, how do you guard this fucking guy, right? He's a 6'9" point guard. But to your point, the NBA then didn't have and wouldn't have really allowed their bigs to handle the rock like they do now. There were guys, and I think that they probably, Chad, this is something that I've thought a lot about through the years. There were probably guys that could have done all of those things. I don't think that Bob Pettit couldn't have done a lot of those things. I don't think that Ralph Sampson, all right, people are oohing and on over Victor Wembanyama, who was going to be a great draft prospect, 7'4". That's what Ralph Sampson was, and he could handle the rock really well. The coaches just didn't let that happen. That was not part of the game plan. And I can only imagine what would have happened if Bill Cartwright started going through his legs at the top of the key playing for the Knicks, let alone the Chicago Bulls, or if Robert Parrish would have tried to step out and shoot a 3, right? Like Casey Jones would have benched his ass immediately.
Right.
It didn't work that way. But what we're seeing and the way that we're seeing, and I think that's so great here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the likes of Giannis, if you're a Denver fan, Nikola Jokic, if you're a Philly fan, Joel Embiid, Lakers, whatever. But Anthony Davis is still a great player when healthy. Zion Williamson, not necessarily the same height as these guys, but definitely a big guy, much bigger than a Charles Barkley. the fact that we're seeing them doing what they're doing, I think is really impressive. And it does show me that, regardless of what kind of change the NBA wants to make and how they want to zig when everybody else zags, if you're tall and you're big, you're going to be better. That's because basketball is still a tall person's game. I don't care what you do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to kind of how they used to think, it was about field goal percentage. And your field goal percentage was kind of how they based how successful you were. And if you were a big guy and you were in that 60 percentile, you're doing pretty well.
You bet.
That 50, 60 percentile. And that's what you were going for. So you're always trying to look for the shot, the shot that's closer, the easier shot, so you can up that field goal percentage. So you have a better chance of actually scoring the basketball. They don't really look at it like that anymore. Now it's this whole analytics and a 3 is better than a 2 kind of concept, which is true. And you are seeing this kind of crossover. You are seeing some more guys doing, hitting those mid-range jumpers like you used to, which I think is smart, because if you've got that open look on the floor, why not take it? Why not dribble, why not dribble past the guy that's covering you on the 3 and shoot that, 15-foot jump shot?
Well, it's crazy not to. And I think that, yes, the 3-point shot, people got crazy with this. Steph Curry has done more for the NBA than any other player since Michael Jordan. Because when you grew up, you go out to the playground, you want to be like Mike, right? And we're trying to do up and under layups and stuff, but we can't do those dunks. We can't do the things that Michael does. Steph Curry made it to where everybody now is looking at it, young kids coming up, looking at it differently. They're like, we can chuck it, we can shoot it. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that that's done, and I'm not saying that that's over with, and that's cool, but not everybody can do that. And like you've mentioned, when everybody's zigging, somebody else is going to zag, and you take those mid-range jump shots. And yeah, I think that's why we see Jason Tatum, DeMar DeRozan last night had a big game versus the Miami Heat, using that mid-range game. And who knows, maybe we'll see baseball players, maybe we'll see them hit into the actual open areas they call the gap or the shift. I mean, like, that's a fucking open area. If you're a Major League Baseball player, like, take the mid-range jump shot. Why try to hit the home run? Like, hit the ball there. There's nobody standing there.
Yeah, that's just smart.
I don't know. It's just me. All right, guys and gals, we're going to take another quick pause for the cause, say hello to some more of our friends. When we come back, we'll update you on this morning's poll question at the Sports Carney. Where do you rank the Immaculate Reception in terms of top plays NFL all time? Plus, we'll get you ready for some interesting betting action tonight in the NBA. We've got some Lakers action, got some Bucks action. Stick around.
Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home, or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
Hey, it's time for koozies, hot tub, and jacuzzis in downtown La Crosse. Whether you're looking to relax after a hard day's work, or maybe you're up for a little soak and poke, we got you covered. That's right, when you're in the market for a hot tub or jacuzzi, all you have to do is call the Coos. 555-SOAK. That's 555-7625.
Soak and poke is a slang term for hot tub sex.
Please practice responsibly.
Back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the Sports Carnival. Dale Carnegie made a good point when he said, remember, today is the tomorrow you worried about yesterday. Now, here's your host, Dave Carney.
All right. I like that one. Thanks, Dale. Appreciate that. I went to the Dale Carnegie school once for a sales training thing. That was very, very interesting. Have you ever read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence Others?
I have. Yes, I have read that book, and I got a lot from it. Yeah, Dale Carnegie was an interesting fella.
He surely was. His uncle Andrew Carnegie, also part of the great establishment of early New York and what we would call current American Cultural Society. But if you're into sales, the Dale Carnegie Institute, it's definitely worth the price, Chad. Speaking of worth the price, this is something you can get for free when you make your initial deposit, 125% deposit match. When you sign up with our official betting partner here on the Sports Carnival, that is betus.com. You go online, betus.com, enter the promo code CARNIVAL when you sign up, and then you make your initial deposit, and you're going to get free 125% of your initial deposit, all the way up to $2,500. depending on how deep your pockets are. I was talking to a friend of the show, Nick. He actually works for Lacrosse Beverage, Chad, who was working with us and this big end of the year promotion that we're doing here, the giveaway with the recovery room. And he was asking about BetUS and how this all works, and said, listen, I don't have 2,500 to put in at one time, but if I put in 100, I get $125 for free. And I was like, yeah, Nick, you get 125 for free. And Chad, tonight, I want to hit a couple of different NBA games. I want to play the first half. The Lakers are taking on the Kings. The Lakers do not have Anthony Davis. The other night they played without LeBron and they played without Russell Westbrook. I don't know who's going to suit up tonight for the Lakers. Don't care. First half, the Sacramento Kings are only 3-point favorites. This game is in Sacramento. I think the Lakers, like a lot of teams, can make pushes in the second half, try to keep it close. Your pride comes into play. You don't want to get completely, housed if you're playing a division opponent. But the Lakers right now, again, without the likes of Anthony Davis, look like an easy play against. I like Sacramento -3 in the first half. And then here's another one. The Boston Celtics are 9.5 to 10-point favorites tonight against the Pacers. Boston actually needs a win tonight to sort of get themselves back on track. In the first half, Chad, they're only 6-point favorites. So I'm going to take Boston -6 in the first half tonight. I'm going to take the Sacramento Kings -3 in the first half as well. The Bucks game, as mentioned, I've got the numbers back up here, is a little too close for comfort. Milwaukee is a 2-point dog, the same as they were against the Pelicans, even though they beat them handily, and the same that they were against the Memphis Grizzlies recently, who beat them by 41. Cleveland has recently beaten Milwaukee, though. So this game for me, little too close for comfort. I don't like betting with emotion, so I'm going to stay away from it. But that's where the Bucks are at tonight versus Cleveland. Again, tip-off 7:10 p.m. Milwaukee 2-point dogs. I really do feel like the Boston Celtics minus first half versus Indiana and the Kings -3 versus the Lakers provide a ton of value, though.
Donovan Mitchell has been a good add to that Cleveland Cavaliers team that already had a great defensive team, and now you add some offensive power. And that's another team you don't want to sleep on in the East. I know we talk a lot about the Bucks and the Celtics deservedly, and I think they are the best team, teams in the East. But Cleveland's one of those teams that could be a spoiler.
They're there. You betcha.
Especially in the playoffs. They're kind of built a little bit for the playoffs and because of their defensive prowess. So that's not one you want to sleep on right there.
No, Cleveland is a team last year, Chad, that surprised everybody, right? Because Cleveland played with JB Bickerstaff and his whole coaching staff went to the wood shop, like literally during the offseason, went to a cabin and said, how are we going to play with Kevin Love, with Jared Allen, with this kid Mobley that we just drafted from USC? How are we going to play with these three bigs or more? And they figured it out. They bring Love off the bench, who had a resurgent year. Mobley and Allen played great. They went tall. They were 7 foot nearly across the board, except for a couple of their guards. So you trade a guy for the Cavs, you trade a guy that was a number 5 pick out of Alabama. You get Donovan Mitchell back, though. Colin Sexton was a good player. I mean, a really good player. But you trade him. You bring in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who is a clutch performer in the postseason, but whose chemistry with Rudy Gobert was obviously not working anymore.
Right.
Like those two guys, it wasn't working out. And then you put them on Cleveland. Yeah, I agree with you. They are a postseason team that you're not going to want to face. What will generally happen, though, and this is where I wonder if Donovan Mitchell he's not in the same class to me as Jason Tatum, as Giannis Antetokounmpo, as even Nikola Jokic. At a certain point, I think the overall talent of those other guys in a 7-game playoff series, it ends up winning out. But we have seen things like the Toronto Raptors, work in an isolated situation with the guy like Kawhi, a lucky bounce or two, other teams getting injured at the right time.
Yeah.
You can see that team win a championship.
I can see them being a spoiler. I don't know if they win the championship, but I could see them knocking off one of these teams that we think will win a championship.
Sure. I could see it too.
That's one of those deals. And I think Jared Allen is possibly he's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year along with Brook Lopez, I think.
Yeah, he'll be up there. I think Brook Lopez's impact is probably so much more nationally pronounced. And just going back to this narrative, the narrative building that we see happening, the more and more that writers start talking about this, the more and more likely it becomes, right? Like that's one of the ways that it happens, because they're the ones that have the vote. Jeremy P12 Foreman in here with a very tongue-in-cheek comment, I believe. He says he wrote Carnival on his wife's forehead. She got pissed and asked, what the fuck? I said, Dave told me that's all I had to do to make 125% deposit. And you were just complaining about how hungry you were. See, that's the kind of stuff. The kind of stuff that
Foreman
only get online and on the Sports Carnival. But these are things that Foreman always wanted to share with us, but I wouldn't let I wouldn't let be shared without some major word hacking going on for me, which it increased my creative abilities in the moment, because when you're reading a message and that comes through on like a text message or something, when you're reading a message like that and you're already committing to sharing something with your audience that you're reading, now you have to just go ahead and pick different words, come up with different phraseologies. So Foreman, thank you so much for keeping us on our toes. Speaking of keeping you on your toes, Chad, I've got a list of things I've got to hit. Joe's Helping Hands Landscaping is looking for folks that want to stay on their toes during the holiday season. Perhaps you're looking for extra work. If you're a UW guy, if you're a UW, football player, if you're somebody that just wants to get outside, make some extra bucks, you don't have to commit to this full time. Helping Hands Landscaping needs you for snow removal. Joe's got machines. He's got all sorts of stuff for you. Check him out. Give him a call. If you have any trouble finding him, hit me up at the Sports Carney across social media. Again, good paying work. It's not something you have to commit to for a long time. If you need some extra cash right now, Joe's Helping Hands Landscaping. Tomorrow, Chad, we're going to make another appearance on ESPN 105.5 with John Papadopoulos at 5 p.m. So we'll be doing this thing at 5 p.m. on the regs. Last week we had a Badger game, so we did it at 5 p.m. with John Papadopoulos. And tomorrow we'll either be speaking to John on the program or Kent Dernbach, head coach of the Eagles men's team, who had their game actually canceled versus Augustana last night, rescheduled, I should say, until next week. So the inclement weather here in the area has really halted unnecessary travel. So Augustana and UW will not play tomorrow. The Eagles are practicing right now, which is why Coach Dernbach couldn't join us this morning. So we'll either talk to him or John Papadopoulos from ESPN 105.5 tomorrow. And again, don't forget the 29th of the month, we've got our huge party at the Recovery Room, who proudly supports us here in the Trauma Center studios. Our friend Kyle Cable sold my house in 2 days. You need to sell your house. If you need to buy a house, you got to talk to the official realtor of the program, Kyle Cable. I was actually talking to Kyle yesterday, Chad. I wasn't thinking about buying a new house right away, but I asked him about this multifamily property. He went and looked into it for me. If I do any purchases, I know that I've got a mortgage provider here, right? It's the Midwest Mortgage Team. Mike Garcia, Todd Vercruzzi, the Coos are the official mortgage providers of the program. Tony Rouse and Brian Sandmeyer, my new insurance agents at Preferred Insurance downtown La Crosse, home insurance, business insurance, flood insurance, auto insurance. Preferred Insurance is the official insurance provider of the program. And of course, our good buddy Sean O'Neill at the O'Neill Law Firm. Chad, bankruptcy, family, criminal, all that kind of stuff. If you're in trouble, be sure to give Sean O'Neill a call. We are loving the love that we get from downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much for helping us do this thing.
Rob Dog doing some deep digging here. He says before Carrera signing, the Mets opening day payroll was sitting at a whopping $326
and that's before
million. Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be up to about, 500 million. It's going to be somewhere around 500, 600 million. It's a lot of money, Chad. It's a lot of money. Doesn't guarantee him anything, though. It really doesn't. The amazing Mets did not win because they had the largest payroll in Major League Baseball history, right? The 1969 Mets did not win because of that. It was just not the way.
And they are still the Mets. So you got to remember that. So
yes.
I don't know if that guarantees them anything other than a nice luxury tax. That's about all it guarantees you for sure.
You know who I'd be really scared of right now is the San Diego Padres. The San Diego Padres apparently decided they were going to figure this thing out come hell or high water, and they have got a lot of talent. This isn't just like long in the tooth talent. They paid their guys when they're still young, right? Like they've got 23, 24-year-olds. San Diego is going to be a tough team. But the New York Mets, listen, you buy enough players and anything's possible. I don't know, man. I see a market like that when you've already got players that get chippy with the fans because they're not playing well and they start to take umbrage and boo them.
That's the thing. You got to live up to that. You got to live up to that payroll. And that becomes pressure after a while. Yeah. That's why I think it's decent. 162 games, you can kind of, okay. But when it starts getting towards the end and you're going into the playoffs, now you have to win. It's not, hey, we want you to win. No, you got to win. You know how much money we're paying you assholes? You got to win.
Exactly. And believe me, the New York fans, they're a lot like those Philadelphia fans. They know it. And they feel it.
Stuff. Yeah. Start hucking batteries at you.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's real talk right there. As long as they don't huck Neil Duda's CDs at you, then you're going to be pretty good, which, by the way, man, that thing bumps great in the SUV. As we wrap up here, Franco Harris passed away, 72 years old, right on the heels of the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception celebration. Where do you guys rank this play all-time NFL history? 72% chat on our Facebook group page. Give it a top 5 designation. 60% say top 5 on Twitter at the Sports Carney. Remember to follow us across social media at the Sports Carney. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you bright and early for the final show of the week, Thursday, tomorrow, here on the Sports Carnival.